Why would anybody outside the U.S. visit the U.S. right now? The risks so outweigh any reason to go to the States, in my opinion. There's a woman that I worked with briefly in my 20s who was one of the first Canadians to end up in ICE detention. She was in there for fucking 2 weeks, getting like shuffled around the country. That scared the hell out of a lot of people in Canada. And with roving gangs of Gestapo like wandering around major cities, why would anybody go? The chances of getting scooped up, they're low. Yeah, they are. But a non-zero chance of ending up in ICE detention, which
international tourism is one of the most sensitive economic indicators available because it responds almost immediately to changes in how a country is perceived abroad. Unlike trade relationships or investment flows that take months or years to shift, travel decisions are made in real time based on current information, current risk assessments, and current feelings about a destination. When a longtime allied nation like Canada, whose citizens historically needed no particular reason beyond wanting to visit, begins producing news stories about its own people being detained, shuffled between facilities, and held for weeks without clear legal justification, the calculation for every potential Canadian traveler changes overnight. What makes this moment particularly significant is that the people being detained are not the demographic profile that enforcement rhetoric typically invokes. When white Canadian citizens are caught up in these operations, it removes the ability to frame the risk as something that only applies to specific communities. The fear becomes universal, and universal fear produces universal avoidance. The tourism industry does not distinguish between visitors who stayed home because of political disagreement and visitors who stayed home because they feared detention. The empty hotel room and the unfilled airplane seat cost exactly the same amount, regardless of the reason behind them.
I just wanted to put out a request to anyone that's not living in the hellscape that is the United States right now. Please don't come here. Nothing else is working. Nothing's working. Everyone is protesting. Everyone's protesting. We're saying, no, we don't want it. Stop it. And it's not working. The only thing that speaks to this administration is money. So don't come here. Okay? If you are planning to travel, don't. Cancel your trips, cancel your hotels, cancel your flights, cancel anything you have coming up in the next year. Please. The more expensive it was, the better. If America is no longer a place that people travel to because it doesn't feel safe and we lose out on all that money, maybe that will be a form of protest that our government understands.
I thank Donald Trump for the boycott that we're currently receiving in the United States from Canadians. I know most of you may not be feeling this or may not see it yet, completely unaware because you don't see it in your daily life. But just let me tell you this. I had a couple of riders this week, both from Toronto. Both are coming down to see family. One had a newborn baby in the family and the trip had been scheduled for a while. And the other had a sick family member that they needed to come see. And they both told me basically these stories. Number one, that when they went to the airport, that the U.S. Customs, and for Canada, you get on the U.S. Customs and in Canada, that there was like nobody in line. And that both planes were like half full as opposed to being completely full. And usually there's a 2-hour wait or more that they told me. They also told me that because of Donald Trump and because of his tariffs with Canada and the way that they have been treated by Trump, they are boycotting every single product in Canada that is made in the United States. You can go to the grocery stores in Canada and there would be for the U.S. products, for example, Lay's potato chips and all the chips and all the stuff from the U.S. completely full. Not a one, they're on sale. She said they're on sales price for $2.97. Nobody's touching it. The Canadian chips, the Canadian food, all the Canadian right beside it, cleaned out. Shelves are cleaned out. Same thing with soup. American soup, stock full. Canadian soup cleaned out. Coca-Cola, Pepsi, not touching a single drop from the United States. Everything from Canada, they're buying. And that the Canadians also are canceling their trips to the United States. I see this on a couple of other videos I've posted. I've had several 100,000 responses. And same thing. they're canceling. You read the news and listen to the news in Canada, they're canceling everything. I've been asked to be on a radio talk show in Vancouver, Canada to discuss all of this, and they are angry and upset with Donald Trump in the United States, and the rest of us are going to pay for it. So same thing with hotels, same thing with those that are in high tourist destinations from Canada, Florida in particular, South Florida, Orlando, other parts of the U.S., you all are going to start to feel it. If you work for these companies that make these products that are sold in Canada, they're not going to be moving. So they're going to start not needing you to work.
If I did not live in the United States, I would not come here. If I was about to take a trip to another country and it was not absolutely necessary, meaning it was like a very close friend or family member who really, really needed me or needed to see me or some very, very special occasion, I absolutely would not travel there if they were doing to their citizens and non-citizens what's going on in the United States right now.
The consumer boycott described here operates on two tracks simultaneously, and understanding both is essential to grasping the full economic impact. The first is the direct loss of Canadian tourist spending in the United States. The hotels not booked, the theme parks not visited, the restaurants not filled, and the retail purchases not made. The second is the loss of American export sales in Canada itself, the grocery store shelves full of American products that Canadian consumers are deliberately leaving behind in favor of domestic alternatives.
Tourism collapse. America First has cost the U.S. $21 billion just in 2025. If you did not know, we are being boycotted by the entire world. We are now losing at least $20 billion a year. But let me tell you what that means for the U.S. economy. Normally, we create about a couple 100,000 jobs just from tourism. The second thing is it stimulates thousands and thousands of jobs. For instance, like Las Vegas, the tourist industry is number one. So if the tourists are not coming here, you can imagine how that's going to affect the entire Las Vegas area. And yes, we are all interconnected globally and within our state, city, and the United States of America. Did you know that Canadians spend $20 billion alone? Just that group, they're the largest group every single year. That creates 150,000 jobs and stimulates thousands and thousands more. And right now they're boycotting us. They're boycotting us because of how horribly we have treated them. You know, somebody says to me, who treats Canadians horribly? And I agree, the nicest people in the world. But this is going to cost us money, and I want you to multiply that loss times 4. In addition, they're not buying our products. The U.S. is in very, very big trouble, ladies and gentlemen. Please do the best that you can to get your finances in order.
Wouldn't it be amazing if the whole world boycotted the U.S. World Cup 2026 because they're allowing Israel to play and attend, and they're banning the likes of Iran from attending? So, boycotts are in order.
To all the countries around the world that supply America with their goods, you know, from their clothing to their food, to their vehicles, to their electronics. How about we boycott America for a few weeks? Stop sending stuff over there. You know, they have no production over there in America, so let's just see if we can teach them a lesson.
I'm so glad that I've cancelled all travel to the United States. The news just beeped up that the Orange Man has just cancelled all negotiations for trade with Canada. Once again, he's just a bully and a failed bully and a misogynist and a convicted felon. And of course, I think 6 bankruptcies. And now he's started war in the Middle East after promising, of course, peace all over the world. And at one point he thought Putin should be the arbitrator of peace. I mean, but even more seriously, a Canadian died in an ICE detention center in Florida, a Canadian citizen. So that is on them. That is murder, or it certainly is neglect. I read the other day about a woman of Guatemalan origin not given prenatal care and losing her child and being forced to have a stillbirth in detention. This is how horrible it is.
$21 billion is an abstract number until it is broken down into its human components. Every $1 billion in lost tourism represents thousands of hospitality workers with fewer hours. It represents hotel rooms sitting empty in cities that built their entire economic identity around the visitor experience. It represents restaurant workers, tour operators, transportation companies, souvenir vendors, and the entire downstream economy that depends on the spending of people who came from somewhere else and chose to be here. When that spending stops, the consequences do not stay contained to the tourism sector. They ripple outward into local tax bases, small business revenue, and the economic stability of communities that had no part in producing the policies that drove the visitors away. The Canadian figure is the most striking because of its scale. 150,000 American jobs directly connected to Canadian tourism alone. That is not a rounding error. That is a workforce the size of a mid-sized American city, employed because Canadians historically chose to spend their vacation dollars south of the border. The decision to antagonize that relationship through tariffs and inflammatory rhetoric did not come with a plan for replacing that economic activity. It came with a slogan, and slogans do not pay the rent for the hotel housekeeper in Orlando or the bartender in Miami Beach who is now working half as many shifts as she was 6 months ago. Public statements that have alienated one of America's closest and most economically intertwined neighbors. Canada is not a distant trading partner that can be antagonized without immediate domestic consequences. It is the largest trading relationship the United States has, embedded in supply chains, manufacturing networks, energy infrastructure, and consumer markets that affect American jobs in every state. When that relationship is damaged by tariffs and hostile rhetoric, the repair does not happen quickly. Consumer habits that shift during a boycott do not always return when the political context changes. Businesses that find Canadian alternatives during a period of American product avoidance may stay with those alternatives permanently.
This goes out to all my people who have plans to come to the United States or want to come travel to the United States and are like on the fence about it and don't know what to do with everything going on here. Don't come. My recommendation is to 100% boycott this country. Do not spend any money here. Do not plan any travels here. Show them that the world does not need the United States, because they don't. So please just boycott. Boycott and
do not travel to America. Do not travel to America for the next 4 years. Especially as a black or brown person. You do not want to get caught up in Trump's deportations. I'm sure by now you've heard of the German and UK tourists who were arrested by ICE and detained for days. Allegedly, the German tourists were chained. You do not want that to be your story, especially if you are taking your family on holiday with you. We already know that Trump has a checkered history with racism, and he's managed to infect a large proportion of that country. Do not spend your hard-earned money on a country that does not appreciate you as a black or brown person. For the next 4 years, the world is your oyster. Maldives, Thailand, Bali, Hong Kong, Mexico, Dominican Republic, Jamaica. These are all amazing places. Let's not go to a country that's increasingly becoming lawless. A country where the president has no respect for the rule of law. A country where the president ignores federal judges. My family and I go to Florida every single year. We love Disney, we love Universal, but for the next 4 years, we're going to be going anywhere but. And I think that you should all do the same. Do not travel to America. Pass it on.
Beginning to end is the international dimension of a domestic political crisis, the way that governing decisions made in Washington translate into economic consequences felt in hotel lobbies in Orlando, on grocery store shelves in Toronto, in airline booking systems across Europe, and in the travel plans of families in the United Kingdom, Germany, and beyond who have decided that the risk and the message are not worth it. The detention of tourists from Germany and the United Kingdom is particularly significant because those countries are among America's closest allies, not nations with adversarial relationships with the United States, but partners with deep historical, cultural, and economic ties. When citizens of allied nations are detained by immigration enforcement while visiting the country they came to see, the story does not stay local. It travels. It gets covered by international media. It gets shared by millions of people who then adjust their own travel plans based on what they read. And it gets remembered long after the specific incident fades from the news cycle. The calls to boycott being they are coming from ordinary people making individual decisions about where to spend their time and money. That is precisely what makes them powerful and precisely what makes them difficult to reverse. A government-level trade dispute can be negotiated. Individual consumer choices made by millions of people across dozens of countries, rooted in a genuine sense that a destination has become unwelcoming or unsafe, cannot be resolved with with a press release or a policy reversal. Trust takes years to build and can be destroyed in a single news cycle. The $21 billion figure cited in this represents the early accounting of that destruction. It will grow as the calendar advances, as vacation seasons come and go with bookings that never materialize, and as the ripple effects of reduced spending move through every industry connected to the visitor economy. The American workers absorbing those consequences did not choose this outcome. They are simply the ones closest to where the economic shockwave lands. And the question worth sitting with is this: when the policies pursued in the name of putting America first begin costing American workers their livelihoods by driving away the world that used to come here willingly, what exactly has been put first?